Good evening. Welcome to Vibin with Ashley Live. I'm your host, Ashley Live, and this is episode 231 of my show. So I'm so excited for my next guest. Reason being, I actually know this person in real life. I can call them a friend. This is also a mentor to me in the broadcasting industry. The one, the only radio personality, Gomez Adams from TK99. His broadcasting journey began in 1981 at WRMV in Herkimer, followed by roles at WSTM-TV 3 and Y94 FM, where he hosted popular shows like Club Gomez and The Morning Show. For the past 30 years, Gomez has been the beloved host and radio personality on the TK99 Morning Show, also hosting the Coach Boeheim Show, now known as the Adrian Autry Show, for 25 years. Gomez is in the house, and let's get this party started. Hi, Gomez.
Hello, Ashley. How are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm so very honored to welcome you to my show.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me and having me on.
Of course, of course. So how's your night going so far?
Good. You can see here I'm at the radio station because just for this show, your show, it's actually easier to do it from here. And while I'm here, I'm just doing some prep stuff that I'll use tomorrow morning. I just had the Yankees game on because TK99 runs New York Yankees baseball, and there were some back-to-back home runs that I made a note of what time they were. So tomorrow I can come in and find the audio and play that back on the morning show.
Yeah.
So I'm being productive here tonight. It's at the Galaxy Media Partners headquarters here in Armory Square. So you can see some of the stuff around the studio, and this is where I've called home now for coming up on 30 years.
30 years. 30 years. Like, okay, this was a question down the line, but we're just going to get into it because you said 30 years. So next month, June, will mark 30 years of you hosting the TK99 morning show. So can we just let that marinate? Because 30 years is a very long time, especially in the radio industry,
It sure is. Yeah, 30 is a blessing, for those of us who like to do this, and to have a local broadcaster, the guy who owns the company and the radio station, the guy who hired me 30 years ago, and then the company has really grown since. He just believes in live local broadcasting, and that's why I've been able to be here for 30 years. We have some other, right down the hall, like in the same building, for example, SUNY 102 is one of the stations in the Galaxy family of stations. Rick Gary does the morning show on SUNY 102, and he's been here 15 to 20, somewhere in there. And I grew up listening to him on the school bus, with the Rick and Ron show. So it's kind of cool working with him and Josh and Cody down at K-Rock down the hall. They've been here for an awful long time. So just being able to work for a local broadcaster, a local company, and a local guy that lets us do this. And he's always said, as long as you guys are having fun and it's working, it's like, do whatever you want to do and have some fun.
Yeah.
So that's why it's been 30.
It's important. I definitely think the importance of local radio is important because you can go to other radio stations here in central New York or anywhere across the country. People are syndicated. They hire somebody from Kansas City to voice track on a station.
Yep.
I mean, that's a very common thing nowadays. Back then it wasn't, but it's so important to be local because you're here in the community, you know what's going on, you're going to all these events, you see people, and I think the local aspect is so important for radio.
I agree, and I think a lot of stations and companies don't take advantage of that fact, and we do. I mean, after we're done later on here in an hour or whenever this show wraps up, if I wanted to, I could walk out the door, go into Armory Square, go up to, Margaritas and get a margarita if I wanted to up in the corner, or have a beer, and then get in the car and go home.
Yeah.
But it's all right here, and it is so great just being local like that.
Definitely. So talk to me. I mean, 30 years. I mean, so much has happened in that span of time. What has it been like working on the show for that long?
It's like, I think anybody who's done anything for any length of time, they'll say it doesn't seem like it. It's like, wow, when you put it, when you start looking at the years, but it's been fun, and every day it's different. And that's why I've always liked it. No matter what's happening in the world, every day you come in here, it's different people on the phone, different guests, different callers, different. Well, like this is kind of a silly example, but for example, I'm doing some prep work for tomorrow's show. So here it is on Wednesday, was it May 8th? So tomorrow's May 9th, and among the birthdays tomorrow, Billy Joel is having a birthday tomorrow.
Yeah.
And in 2015, he was in the Carrier Dome. And the day of that show, or the day before that show, the program director here, Mimi, gave me a call at home and said, hey, the promoter called the radio station. They want to know, is there anybody here who wants to introduce Billy Joel at the Carrier Dome? You know, I said, well, sure. Well, why not? Maybe I need 2 tickets at a parking pass, and I'm good to go.
Yeah.
So I went and did the intro, and it ended up being about the coolest thing that's ever happened. And I was just noodling it around here on YouTube, and I didn't realize the whole video from that presentation is on video. So I don't know if you can see it. I can like kind of turn it. I was going to show you a little bit of it here, but that's Billy Joel there. And I'm going to play this tomorrow, the audio part on the radio there, but this is him.
I'm going to introduce someone tonight. Before we continue, please welcome Gomez from TK99.
Billy Joel introduced me.
That's wild. What are the chances?
Like, not the other way around. Like, I thought I was introducing him. Billy Joel introduced me. And so I got up and said a few words about the Billy Joel in the show that night.
Yeah.
And that was 2015, so that was 9 years ago. And just some of the cool things that have happened over the years when you start to do the math on, concerts or Syracuse basketball Final Fours or tournament games, anything like that. It's kind of a blur because it doesn't feel like 30 years, but it's been 30 years of just really, really a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like so much has happened with your guests and with concerts that come to the area, the Taste of Syracuse, the festivals, the award ceremonies. It's just like this snowball effect of things that is always happening, right?
It is. There is. There's always, people always say there's nothing going on in this town, and that's not true. I mean, there's a ton of things going on in this town if you want to find them. I mean, there's shows, concerts, dinners, fundraising efforts. There's always something going on and something to do and be a part of. Mm-hmm. So when somebody calls or gets a hold of me and asks, hey, do you want to MC this or be a part of this? If I'm available, absolutely. I mean, why wouldn't you? It's generally fun stuff. And when you stop getting asked to do that kind of stuff, that's, when you start to worry.
Exactly. Because you're just like, they want me, they need me. But when the calls stop coming through and you're just like, I'm ready, I'll do it.
So it's fun. Well, and plus it's maybe an old school mentality in a way, but it's technically terrestrial radio, traditional radio is public airwaves by definition of it. So I've always viewed it as part of my job. If there's a public service that I'm being invited to do or asked to be a part of, at some level, I think we're kind of obligated to do some of these things just because that's what it is, public airways, and we work on them.
Definitely. So I want to talk about college, like a long time ago. Talk to me, because you started with chemical engineering and then you transitioned to broadcasting. So talk to me about that.
That is weird. Yeah, I went to locally. I went to Marcellus High School, graduated there in '78. Go Mustangs! And my first major, I went to University of Buffalo because I was a science and math guy. It was in school. I was good at those. It's all in hindsight, but at the time I figured, well, if you're good at science and math, then that's what you have to go into. So, I finally go into engineering because that's what you do. So I went, and I was there for a year and a half, and I was just barely passing. I mean, it just was a struggle, and I liked the college. University of Buffalo is a great school, but the program, and I could tell probably after the first year that it wasn't going to take, but I gave it, let me give it one more semester. And I gave it the old college try there in the sophomore year, and about halfway through, it's like, not gonna happen, not my thing. So I moved back home to Marcellus, and that would have been starting the spring semester of 1980. And I just went to start taking classes at OCC, not knowing really what I wanted to do. And there was one guy on campus that I'd gone to high school with. He's the only guy that I knew on campus, so I just was hanging around him, and he was involved in the college radio station. So I'd go hang around. It was WOCC. It was like a closed circuit within the the buildings of campus radio station. But it was a blast. I saw how much fun he was having, and I always enjoyed listening to the radio. Like I said, on the school bus with Rick and Ron in the morning. But I never thought of it as like a career option. It was just something I liked listening to, and there were some radio people that I enjoyed. And there's like one specific radio, say, memory. It would have been the Muhammad Ali Joe Frazier fight from Madison Square Garden. So it would have been 1971, I think it was. But they had back then, the pay-per-view were at like movie theaters. Like the Landmark Theater had a big pay-per-view, so you could go watch the fight there. But they didn't have it like at home, obviously, at that time. So if you were going to watch it, you had to buy a ticket and go. But I was only like 11 years old. But one of the local radio stations had a guy providing updates from that fight. And I had my little transistor radio, and I was tuning in, and I was, everybody was so interested. It was the fight of the century. But I don't remember the guy's name, but he did such a great job providing the in between the rounds coverage of what happened in the previous round of the boxing match. I mean, you could see it the way he was describing it. You could smell it. I mean, it was such great theater of the mind, and it was so exciting. But I always remember that as a specific radio moment that I really, to this day, remember as something that was like, that's actually pretty cool. So fast forward to OCC, I then got into the radio program after hanging around with my friend, and then started from there. So that's how the transition went from good, solid career as a chemical engineer to uncertain career as a broadcaster.
Yeah.
but a lot more fun though.
Yeah, I think people who are in radio or have even dabbled into it, they're just like, wait, you get paid to do this? Like, this is so much fun.
It's funny you say that, because I don't care what you do for a living. There's just days that there's bad days. There just is, for whatever reason. And I think a perfect example, you mentioned the Coach Boeheim nighttime show that I co-hosted with him for a number of years. We were doing a show one night, and it was that year, for several years, it was at Delmonico's Steakhouse in Erie Boulevard. And the coach on those shows is just entertaining. He's engaging. He's funny. He's, well-read. He likes to talk about different things. So a guy called from the Thruway. He was listening, just scanning the radio dial, happened to catch the show. And he was from Connecticut. So he called up and he said, "Hey, Coach, my name is so-and-so. I'm from Hartford, Connecticut. I'm on the Thruway for work. And I just happened to catch your show, and I've been listening for like a half an hour. And I got to say, you're great on the radio. And as an outsider," he said, "I'm a Connecticut basketball fan. The only time I ever see you, or we see you, is like at a press conference, and you're miserable. And he said, I wish other people could hear this show, because it's a whole different you." And so Coach asked the guy, like, "What do you do for a living?" And the guy said, "I work for the Hartford Insurance Company." And then Coach asked him, "What's the least favorite part of your job?" And the guy said, "Actually, this. I mean, I'm on the road a lot more than I'd like to, but I got to go 3 days a week. I go to Buffalo and Pittsburgh and Philadelphia and make a big loop." And Coach said, "Exactly." He said, "I don't care what you do for a living. If you're a teacher, a lawyer, a plumber, a DJ, a coach, an insurance salesman, there's always one part of your job that if you didn't have to do it, you wouldn't, but you have to."
Yeah.
For me, he said, it's press conferences. I hate them. He said, I look miserable because I am. If I didn't have to do a press conference, I wouldn't. But that's the worst part of his job, and he's willing to put up with it, obviously, for 47 years as the coach.
Yeah.
So even like what would be like a bad, I'm using air quotes here, bad day, and what's the worst that happens in radio? Dead air.
Dead air.
So, okay. Nothing really bad happened, at the end of the day. So, and I gave up years ago trying to tell my friends when they asked about the job and the station and radio, there's no way to make it sound like it sucks. It just isn't. Even if there's a lousy day, it's like, no one's going to get that. It's like, it's fun. It really is.
Yeah. And it's always like a new adventure. Like you said, every day, you never know what's going to happen overnight. You never know. You could be driving the station and something crazy happens. You're like, we have to talk about this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's, and fun things, but also serious things.
Right.
Like we were on the air, as a lot of morning radio guys were on 9/11.
Yeah.
And that was happening in real time. That was important and big and scary. And to be on at moments like that it's memorable. Might not be great radio per se, but it's important radio and it's memorable radio. And I remember some of those moments over the years. I was on the air when the Challenger blew up, because we were all watching. I was at a different radio station. I was at WSYR at the time, and everybody's in the newsroom watching that. And then on the air for the start of the war with Iraq, all that stuff that was going on. So at those particular ones, I happened to be at the radio station and on the air. Yeah. That's when you kind of realize how important this is, because aside from all the fun, hopefully, that we're allowed to have, it's live and you're getting valuable information out quick as you can and as accurate as you can, especially at moments like that. So back to your point there, things happen, overnight, on the way in, early morning. Or it was usually, hopefully it's a fun thing. Like I walked in the door and there was a guy dressed like Elvis in the building. There was a guy dressed as a giraffe walking around. And then the Hoffman hot dog guy. They were like all just like walking around here. It's like what's going on here? Because there's multiple radio stations. Everybody had something different going on that day.
Yeah.
But that's there's not many jobs where that kind of thing happens. So that makes it fun.
Never a dull moment, right?
No.
So, okay, you went back to college 35 years later.
I did.
I can only imagine what that was like for you. What motivated you to go back to school? Going back to when I went to OCC the first time, I was there from 80 to, and I was scheduled to graduate because I started like mid-semester kind of thing. So I was going to graduate December of 81. But in October of 81, I got a call from a radio station, that one in Herkimer, that first radio station I went to work for, with a job offer. I went for the interview, offered me a job. It was only October, but I thought at the time, like, well, this is what I'm going to school for, and I'm getting offered a job in it. So I was kind of tired of school at that point anyway. So I took the job, I withdrew, started my career, started the job in Herkimer. And then, over the years, went from there to the Channel 3. I worked there for a little bit, and then overnight radio on, it was called Magic 104.7 back in the day, and then Y94, and then here for 10 years. But one day in 2016, it was in January, I was driving by the OCC campus on the Howlett Hill Road, for those who know that part of town. And there's a traffic light right there. There's a red light, and it's one of the entrances to OCC from Howlett Hill Road. And then they have an electronic sign, and the electronic sign said, last day to register for spring classes is January 23rd or something like that. And this was like January 15th. And I kept looking at that sign because it's always been in the back of my head that I never actually finished. Yeah.
And so I was looking at that sign, and then the traffic light changed, but it's one of those ones where the arrow goes first. So, I'm looking at the sign. It says last day to register, and I'm seeing a green flashing arrow pointing that way. Like you're,
wow.
You always ask for signs from the universe for things like that. It's like,
yeah,
I think somebody wants me to go. So I put my blinker on and turned. I went up to campus, and I walked into the main student center, the Gordon Student Center, just for information. I literally just walked up to a guy and I said, I went here 35 years ago, and I left, and I kind of want to know what I would need to graduate and get my diploma, because I know it's close, but the curriculum, I'm sure, has changed over the years, and there might be more class. In my head, I thought, it might be another year to take over some things that are now required. I walked around the campus. The guy brought the electronic media office, and Tony Vidala was there, and who's been up there. And I've known Tony for years. And he said, "What are you doing here?" And I told him, I said, "I know it sounds crazy, but I think I want to go back and finish what I need to graduate." And he said, "Hang on one second." And he disappeared in his office, and he had a closet in the back, like a big closet. He was gone for like 5 seconds. And he came out with a big cardboard box. And he said, "You're not going to believe this." And he took the lid off it. And they were in the process of digitizing a lot of the school records and paperwork. And the very top folder, as soon as he took the box off, was my paperwork from 1980.
No way.
Or 1981, rather. Yeah. So it was 35 years later, and you open the box. That was my folder, just as it was left.
Wow.
And it was like, this is like meant to be. I got to find, so, he helped me out. Here's what you're going to need. I found out I needed 3 classes, because then I got some experiential credit for a class. And then, so I got excited. I put it all on a credit card and said, "I'm doing this." So that was January 2016. So I was done in a semester. So I took the 3 classes, powered through it, graduated in May, and then 35 years late, better than never, right?
Yeah, I love what you said about the sign, though. You were looking at that digitized sign. You saw the green arrow. Your folder was on the top of the box. It's kind of just like, this is what you were meant to do. And only 3 classes, like, that's doable.
Yep, it wasn't bad. And I did well in them. I wanted to do well. I didn't want to just show up and, and just get by. And I actually did well with the classes. And then people asked me if I was going to go to the graduation. And it's like, well, yeah, why wouldn't I go to graduation?
You have to.
You have to. And it's, I tell young people that, because some people don't go to their graduations, and they almost everybody I know who didn't go looks back and said they wish they went. It's like, I wish I went to it, because it's, it's a big moment. You should celebrate that.
Of course.
But so that was 2016. So I did the tassel thing, and it was emotional. It was a big moment.
Yeah. And that's so powerful that you did that. You went to the graduation. I'm so happy you went, because I remember when I graduated, and people were like, "You're gonna go? You're not gonna go?" I'm like, yeah, I'm totally gonna go. Like, I put all this work for like, of course I'm gonna celebrate myself, and like, hopefully you celebrate me too.
Yeah, yeah. Just in a community way, the people that you went to classes with and were friends with, and then the experience of going back. I mean, the first time I went to OCC, I still have very good friends that I met the first time around. Mm-hmm. And then the second time around, when I graduated 2016, there was new friends that I met then. And then as a result of that experience, I'm on the board of the OCC Foundation, and I've been doing that for 5 years. Mm-hmm. So I'm really now involved with OCC on a different level as a result of that experience. But so that explains the 35-year gap in my education part of my resume.
Yeah, well, I think life happens, right? And you had gotten all these opportunities in your career track. So it's kind of like you had that job in Herkimer, and you kept getting the job, and then you're like, you're at TK for 30 years, and you're kind of like, but I think the universe gives you what you need at the right time. And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, I think there's, and I think the older I get, the more I buy into that. With like, there's signs that if you're paying attention, there's a path that's lit up there for you. But more often than not, you're not, you either don't believe it or you're not paying attention.
Yeah.
But that was I think a perfect example of, if you're ready, mm-hmm. then what's the saying? The teacher, when you're ready, the teacher appears, or something along those lines. So. Yeah. But it's I agree. That was a cool moment.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to talk about radio and comedy. Talk to me about what originally drew you to comedy.
I just grew up. I was always a fan of it. I had my favorites. I grew up with George Carlin was just like the master, and he's a guy who started in radio. He started, I think, in New Orleans on the radio. Johnny Carson from that era, he was a radio guy when he started out. But I always enjoyed watching these guys on television, not just like the talk show type guys, but if Rodney Dangerfield was going to be on the Tonight Show, I'd fake a sore throat so I could stay up and I might have to call in sick, or I can't go to school tomorrow. But I wanted to stay up to watch Rodney Dangerfield on the Tonight Show.
Yeah.
And I was always just drawn to that. It's just a kind of a fascinating art, and it really is an art. I mean, it's something that you work on, and it's a craft that you can improve on. And actually talking to a couple of my comedy friends recently, and that's in a way that's also the frustration of it. It's never done. It's an ongoing, revolving, living, breathing act, whatever, but it's not finished. It's never finished. So you're always hopefully improving on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's different from radio, obviously, in that, like on the radio here, I'm here in my studio and we do the show. And if you do something, hopefully it's funny, if that's the goal, but you don't know if it was. You're just kind of like, there's nobody here. So then you don't get your report card for like months, so to speak, in the way ratings go.
Yeah.
But in stand-up, you get your report card like immediately, for better or worse. You get an A, a D, a C, or whatever, and it's like kind of working without a net. There's an excitement to it, and it's a challenge, and I don't know, I just like it. So it's more of a hobby. I like doing it, but because of the hours, stuff in the middle of the week is kind of tough to do. But on the weekends, this spring I've been doing a lot of more shows. I was at the Funny Bone last weekend. In a couple of weeks. A little plug for a show coming up on the 18th down at the Boho Comedy Club in Binghamton. Two shows on that Saturday night, and then a couple more in the summer. A lot of fundraiser type things that we'll do, or I'll do. I like to do those, but it's just a different medium, and they're vastly different from each other. I know when we have comedians come into the studio as a guest, for example, often there's guys who they come in here and on the radio, just because it's a different medium, it's they leave the studio and you think, geez, I don't know, that wasn't that good.
Yeah.
But you go see them live in front of a crowd and they're killer. It's just a different medium. And the same thing here. You could, on the radio, you think you're doing great, but then you get on a stage and it's crickets, and it's like, what am I doing up here? But it's a fun little, it's a different outlet, really, more than anything.
I like what you said about trying to tell a joke on air, right? Because you're sitting at your board and maybe you and a guest or whatever, but then like when you're in front of an audience, it's a totally different energy, because you can look at the faces, you can hear laughter, or you could just hear silence, right? And you're like, oh, that actually sounded funny in my head, but nobody liked it.
Nobody laughed. And it's painful when that happens, but it's the only way to figure it out. And I remember early on, I'm trying to think of the first time, I used to host a couple of shows at the old Wise Guys Comedy Club in Erie Boulevard when it first opened, and it was a work thing with the radio station. So we would all take turns hosting shows. So it's just more like standing up, introducing the comics. It wasn't really much material or like doing like real set. But in the 90s, a buddy of mine named Mike Goss, who was a local great stand-up comic, passed away a number of years ago, but he was doing these Wednesday shows at the Spaghetti Warehouse. And he said, yeah, you ought to come down. And so I did. I went under his invitation, and those were fun shows, and it was nerve-wracking. It was awful. I think everybody's awful at first. I remember at that Spaghetti Warehouse, there was one night, and then it was like the first legitimate laugh that I actually got. And I thought my fly was open. I was like, why are they laughing? I was so used to standing up there with nobody laughing that when somebody actually laughed, I think I must have forgot to pull my zipper up or something.
You're like, everyone's silent, but
it's like all of a sudden they're laughing at something. But when it does work, it is a great feeling to go up, have it work, interact with people, and they laugh, and then you get off the stage and you get a moment to yourself, like backstage or the green room, and you go, oh, that was pretty cool. I want to do that again. So it's addictive like that. Once you kind of sort of figure it out a little bit, or you get more comfortable, it's just kind of a good lesson anyway, that the expression, get comfortable being uncomfortable. So there's really not much more uncomfortable things you can do than get up on stage at a comedy club by yourself, and then entertain people. And I compare it with a band. It's different, for a musician. I think, like if you go to an event and there's a band, often they're there and it's kind of background. They're playing, unless you're there for a concert. But if you're at an event or you're at a bar or a club and there's a band there, they might be great, but a lot of people really aren't necessarily paying attention. But if you're doing comedy, they're paying attention. That's why you are there.
Yeah.
So there's no net there. You know, if you're in a band and maybe you're, you know, having a bad night, yeah, you know, it's if there's 3 or 4 other guys in the band and it sounds okay and most people are having a good time, maybe somebody might not even notice.
Yeah.
But if you're having a bad night on stage, everybody notices, and
Yeah,
it's
'cause
awful.
you're up there by yourself. You're very exposed. Like it's
Yep.
not like being on the radio where like no one can see you and you're behind a board and you're like, oh, I'm not feeling great today, and you kind of whatever. Like you're
Yep.
out there.
You're out there, and it's the guys who are good at it. I admire them, and the ones who can just night in and night out get up and try new things. And that's part of it too, is not being able to try or be afraid to try new jokes. I mean, I think there's a tendency early on, especially you get like your 5 or 6 minute set or 10 minutes, and it's comfortable and that you know it works. And you kind of then lean on it too much, so you get up because you want the laughs. It's like, okay, it's just finally working.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get up and you don't try new things, which is long term not good for you. I mean, every night you're up, you should be trying something, at least one thing new, just to keep, you know, expanding the set and getting rid of old stuff and bringing up new stuff. But it's a good exercise. I wish I'd actually started it a long time. And I wish also that I had started it like from an improv background before stand-up, because people I know who have taken that route said that really helped them in their confidence and their, you know, presence on stage before they went to stand-up.
Yeah.
But it's all fun.
Yeah. And I like what you said about improv, because I had a girlfriend who wanted to up her confidence and took comedy classes and forced herself to do improv. And like she had to do like 10 minutes at the end of the class. And I was like, I'm so proud you're doing this because you're getting out of your comfort zone. You're talking about things, right? I mean, people are looking at you, you're looking at them. Like it's scary. It's scary to be up there, right?
It is scary.
Yeah, and I like what you said about that, because if you are looking to work on your confidence and build your communication skills and just like be a better person and do improv, it's like a good thing to do.
It is a good thing to do, and it does. And I know some people use it for like team building.
Yeah.
You know, taking the improv classes together.
Yeah.
And then one of our interns here, he was an intern about 8 or 9 years ago. Steve Rogers, his name is. He was also an OCC guy, and he was, you know, I'm in a studio here. There's a glass window, like a producer booth, and he would sit over there and he would, you know, screen the phone calls. And he was kind of a really nice kid, and, you know, quiet. But one morning he came in and just casually said, "Hey, what'd you do last night?" It wasn't even on the air, and he said he'd gone to Rochester for an open mic night, and I went, like, really? Like, what kind of open mic? He said, "Oh, a comedy open mic." And they go, "No, guys, I didn't know you were into that." And he goes, "Yeah, well, he wanted to try it, whatever." So he started then going to like every open mic locally. Rochester, he'd drive to Albany, you know, to get 5 minutes on stage and then turn around and come home, because that's kind of what you have to do, it, you know, if you really want to get good at it. But I mean, long story short, he's now a touring, pretty successful stand-up comic. He opens for Nate Bargatze, Brian Regan, some big names in, you know, in front of 5,000 or 6,000 people. And that's who I worked with last weekend at the Funny Bone. He was in town headlining. Nice. But that's the kind of work, you know, and even for musicians or anybody who's, you know, trying to earn a living through an art form like that, it's most of it is hustle. There's talent and all of that. But a lot of the day is spent networking, sending out pictures, videotapes, audio tapes, whatever it takes to get in front of people, get your name and face in front of people. And he mastered that. He's really, really good at that. And I know same with some musicians that I know, that just the ones who are able to do it and earn a living at it are just hustling. They just hustle.
Put your head down, work, do what you need to do, because that persistence and consistency will pay off. Well,
and then for, you know, we talked a little bit about this early, but for you too, with what you're doing with the Vibin with Ashley Live, because I think that's a fascinating story and of consistency. That's a big part of the equation for anybody too, is like, not to turn the tables a little bit here, but for when did you start this? And you mentioned at the top of this show, it's show 231.
Correct.
Like, when did you start doing this, and how often do you do it? That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, I started in August 2020 during COVID because people were going live on Instagram. And I was like, I can interview anybody on Instagram Live. And I just kept doing it. And then I got to 10 interviews and I was like, this is so fun. And people were willing to talk because we were all in the house at that time. It was peak COVID, right?
Yep.
And a lot of people were much more accessible during COVID. And it just, I love it. I went to school for radio. I love music, and it's just something I enjoy doing. And like I could just do a couple of these shows and then just throw it away, but I love it. It's so fun. I'm meeting so many amazing people all across the country. I mean, I actually interviewed a couple the other day. They met at Berklee College of Music, but they now live in New Zealand. So they were 16 hours ahead of me, and we were doing this live.
Isn't that amazing?
That's insane. Like, it's crazy to me. And so I just met so many amazing people by doing this show and having so much fun, but also thinking about radio and music and broadcasting and what I love to do. And this is my little baby. So
It is, but and it's. I know you're consistent with it. You do a couple shows a week, usually. I
try
think, right?
Yeah. Because sometimes I reach out to someone. They're like, reach out to me in September. I'm like, okay, I'll make a note to reach out to that person then. So it's just a constant hustle. Like you said, it's got to be consistent, and you just got to keep moving that ball forward. But I mean, 231, it honestly boggles my mind. And I'm like I told you earlier, I'm so honored that you're finally on this show because I've looked up to you for years. I'm honored to call you a friend and a mentor and just someone
Well,
that
thank you.
So,
Well, thank you. That's kind of you to say. Thank you for the kind words, Ashley.
of course.
And same for you. I mean, and then what you're doing now too, because people will ask about this because I've been doing this for so long, how it's changed, mainly in the past 10 years or so, more than anything. But like what you're doing with your show is an opportunity that wouldn't have existed when I started.
Yeah.
Like you could do what you do now and do it well from anywhere. You do it from your house. You can do it off of your phone.
Yeah.
If you have content and you have an idea and guests, you can be anywhere and do it. So that's, in a way, it's offered up more opportunities for people to do their own thing. Whereas when I started, if you want to be on the radio, you had to go to the radio. You had to get your foot in the door somehow and get a job on the air. And that was it. There was no other option. But now through the technology of, like you were saying, talking and interviewing someone who's 16 hours ahead.
Wild.
In real time.
Wild.
Halfway around the world. It's like, how is this happening? But it's exciting. It's actually an exciting time, I think.
Yeah. No, I think it's wild how iPhones and Wi-Fi and streaming technologies and Twitch, like you do live streaming on Twitch too, so people can see you in the studio, and it's like, oh my gosh, this is what they're doing. This is how they're prepping, and it gives your fans a sense of community, and they're like, oh yeah, that's so cool, or like, oh, Gomez is drinking his Dunkin' right now. You know what I mean?
Yep. Whatever it is, or people will notice. The people who watch every day, and we have a number of people who are regulars, they'll notice like on that shelf behind me there, if there's a new item up there, they're like, well, wait a minute, what's up that near that basketball there? It's like, it's something I don't even know what it is, or, I couldn't tell you, but they notice like everything, or, sometimes we put a different shirt on that mannequin in the corner and people will notice that or whatever. But it does. It is like a behind the scenes look, and the shows that I see on different platforms, those seem to be the ones that gain some traction. Just kind of like that raw behind the scenes, and not necessarily the slick production type shows, but just some of the organic kind of like putting on a phone and and showing and talking about stuff in the studio here or whatever. And people like that. It's just different.
Yeah. Behind the scenes does very well now because people have such a short attention spans. So it's like they want to know what happens during the break. What happens when you put on AC/DC? Oh, I was doing this. I was singing to that song, right? Where it's cool because it just normalizes who you are. And people are like, oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Or like I'll put it, and I'll say it, I'll talk to the people on Twitch, say, okay, I got to leave the studio for a minute because I got a guest out front. So here I'll I'll feed AC/DC down the line for you or whatever. And it's fun because they can see like the door opens and they can see whoever is like walking in, and it's cool when it's like we have a lot of coaches, a lot of the athletes from SU, Coach Boeheim, GMAC, guys like that who've been in the building. But like, for example, we had, and he lives locally, which is cool, but Joey Belladonna from the band Anthrax happens to live around here, and he's got other musical projects. But we had him in the studio one morning, and there was a guy on Twitch who was watching from Australia that morning. Mm-hmm. And when Joey walked in and you could see him on camera, before I said anything, the guy who's a huge Anthrax fan in Australia, like in big capital letters in the stream chat, said, "Is that effing Joey Belladonna right there?" It's like, yes, it is. It's and this guy was losing his mind in Australia that the lead singer, it was the first concert he'd ever seen was Anthrax in Australia, like 20 years before or whatever like that. So, but then to offer up before we were on the air, Joey just chatted with this guy like one-on-one.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so that made that guy's day halfway around the world in Australia that his hero, he's talking to him. And that wouldn't have happened,
right?
20 years ago. If you were lucky, you would have a chance to listen to it.
Right.
Whatever, but to in real time around the world on video on Twitch, see and talk to a guy like that and you're a big fan of, that was like a cool moment.
I don't think it made his day. I think it made his life. That's powerful. He's on the other side of the world, and he's witnessing this, and he's like, "Oh my God, it's him!" And then you're like, "Well, I'll have you talk to him for a sec."
Yeah, so he chatted with him, and it was, and Joey's just such a humble kind of down to earth sort of guy. And right at the end of that interview, I just asked him, it's like, "Hey, so what's up with the band?" And he just casually mentioned, "Oh yeah, we got a greatest hits album that's coming out today." And he's like, "Today?" It's like talking about Barry in the lead. It's like by then we were kind of done, but there were some big national websites that picked up on that. So I ended up forwarding copies of the interview to some heavy metal websites that were like, "Oh my God, did Joey Belladonna just say that they got a new album coming out today?"
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool. We had a little bit of a scoop there.
Heck yeah. Yeah. That's the way to do it when you have that breaking news.
Yeah. Go with it. So again, going back to the live and local, if the fact that we're here and we're live, we're able to do that. That's why that happened.
Mm-hmm. So I want to talk about Gomez's food quest. It sounds like such a fun time. You're exploring all these insanely good local restaurants. What inspired the show?
We just wanted to do something as the digital aspect of what we do started to grow, obviously, with social media sites, Facebook, Instagram, Twitch, probably a dozen others. Those are the ones that come to mind, that we wanted to start doing things. First, what we would start to do originally would take some of the audio, cut it up, edit it, and then put it on our social media. So, okay, if we had a cool interview, people could listen to it later. That was kind of like a starting point. But then it was like, well, people are doing everything on video. Now there's cameras in studios, there's cameras. You see some of those shows on ESPN or some of the shows, some of the other reality channels, and that's what it is. It's a radio studio with microphones and people are talking. You're watching them do their podcast live. So we wanted to do something that we could put out there so that, people like food. There's so many of those kind of shows on the Food Network. So say, let's go. In fact, the original name of it was Food Porn, because that's a real hashtag on, social media, where people take a picture of their awesome burger or their, cherry blueberry pie, whatever it is that they had, and that would become food porn. So originally the segment was called Food Porn, and we wanted to highlight places that you probably wouldn't know about or wouldn't hear about. And we kind of search them out on our own. On the show, we'll say, hey, if you know of a place that's serves great barbecue, let us know about it. A little out of the way, because everybody knows the Dinosaur is a great spot, and everybody knows Limp Lizard is a great spot for barbecue. So that's not the kind of place. We've been to those places, but it's, I think, more fun when we go find out about a place. And I mentioned a barbecue because there's a gas station in East Syracuse, and I can't remember the name top of my head, that in the back they do barbecue, and it's amazing.
Oh, wait, still or back in the day?
Yeah, no, it's still there. I think it's in.
We gotta find this place.
It's like off of Fly Road. I can't remember the name of it, but
Never
we
heard of
just
this place.
no. And then somebody told us about it. We went and we ate it. And it was like, this is amazing. It's in it was like it was gas station barbecue. It was fantastic.
I mean, those two kind of don't
No,
go together, but now I really want to try
you
it.
want to go. And then there was chicken riggies that were awesome at the bowling alley in Fayetteville, like the one out near Green Lakes.
Interesting.
I mean, like the best ones, like they were fantastic. It's like at a bowling alley, So when we find those kind of places, those are the most fun ones, I think.
Yeah.
When you're not expecting something, like maybe in the middle of nowhere, and they make awesome whatever it happens to be.
Mm-hmm.
But so we started doing those, and we were trying too hard for a while because we were making little stories out of not just the restaurant, but like the trip to the restaurant, interviews with people, and they were great. But it's like, you know what? They were like 15 minutes long. They were fun. So it's like, let's kind of just get back to the nitty gritty of, again, even like just using like your phone,
mm-hmm.
doing a video on there, showing the food, having some fun with the chef or the guy or the cook or a couple of people at the bar if it's at a bar,
mm-hmm.
and putting them up that way. So that's kind of the way that we do them now. But everybody loves food. Everybody's got their favorite place for wings or their favorite pizza or their favorite. That was one episode we did one day. It was all gas station pizza.
Mm.
So we went to like, we ended up way up in Camden. Like we were gone like all day. Filming that. We were gone from like 10:30 in the morning, got home at like 8 at night. But we went like all over the area, just trying gas station pizza. It was a blast. It was just like a fun little road trip food quest video that day.
Yeah.
But it's fun. I enjoy it. In fact, we'll go out again next week. It's going to be a place up near Oneida Lake. I forget the name of it, but we selected it, looked at it today. It's like, that looks like a fun spot. So we're going to go check that place out.
Good stuff. Well, can't wait for that episode.
Yeah, that'll be, and again, this is, I think we say seasons. This is, I think, season 6 of the food video. So we'll do them we started in April and we'll do 1 or 2 a month through like September. And that's the season. And then we'll pick back up again, give it a rest and come back with it. So this is season 6 of the Food Quest videos, and they're on our Facebook page, and we put them on our Instagram page too.
So fun. And you
it is fun.
These random places and you're like, oh, this is great.
Yeah. I mean, there's the Hotel Salisville out in like Madison County, and it's a blast. I've never been there before, and it's a big on Sunday. They get a big biker thing with barbecue, and they open up a big stage thing, and the food was cool. And
yeah,
so places like that. I mean, I love running across places like that, and the people who own them and run them, and the people who go, the regulars. It's just fun. And plus, it's a good way to have the company pay for a lunch.
Of course, yeah. It's an adventure. It's fun. You're eating. It's like all the favorite things, right?
Yep, all rolled into one little fun segment there. And I watched those shows like, Man vs. Food when Adam Richman was doing that on the Food Network, and Guy Fieri, and those, the Bobby Flay beat Bobby Flay shows. They're just fun. People like to see things. And Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives is that show with Guy Fieri. And I know Coach Boeheim, when he was still coaching, obviously, and if he knew if the team was going to play in Pittsburgh, he would go on that website to see if there was like one of those kind of restaurants that Guy Fieri went to, because he wanted to go try it.
Of course.
You could go anywhere he wants, but I want to go to that little roadside food truck place that had like amazing looking tacos.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the vibe of it. That's the nature of that kind of that segment there. And they're fun to do.
Yeah. So fun. So with such a busy career, how do you prioritize your mental health?
That's a good question. It's for me, sometimes it's just, I wouldn't say burnout, but I mean, sometimes like I have a calendar at home, like next to my phone, just old school, calendar of like appointments, events. And like last weekend, for example, it was filled because there was a lot of stuff. We had, Friday night, it was at the Funny Bone doing a show. But that, to me, that's fun. I wouldn't put that under a stressful thing. Or none of them are stressful per se, but there's a fatigue factor. The next day, we had an event up near Watertown. It was a Make-A-Wish basketball tournament that Eric Devendorf was a part of, and at Lyme Central School. Again, a great time. But then I'd keep my eye on my watch because I had to come home and go, and I was emceeing the Syracuse Press Club awards banquet. So it's like, none of them are like necessarily stressful per se, but when they're lined up one right after the other, by the end of the week, sometimes I'm just like, I can't keep my eyes open. And there's, the term burnout. If you're like Google it, it would probably say, symptoms, listlessness, fatigue, disinterest, whatever. And sometimes it gets that way, and you just kind of like take a breath, and again, remember, I do that, what I do here, it's not, life or death. It's nothing truly bad happens. If a joke bombs, who cares? Okay. And I remember one January, and I don't remember what year it was, but it was they were repairing. We're in Armory Square. This is where the radio station is, and we're on Walton Street. And you go across the bridge from where we are. Like if you go out our front door, turn right, you walk into Armory Square, and there's a bridge there that connects the two over Onondaga Creek. And one January they had to replace it or repair it in January. And it was one of those Januaries where it was like 20 below zero, like every day. But there were guys there who got there when I get into work pretty early. I walk in the building around 5, and those guys were already there. And they're at 20 below, and they're welding, and they're lugging steel, and they're sledgehammering, and they would give a wave. They'd see me in the building, and when I would leave for the day at maybe 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they were still there. And I remember that whole month driving home, going like, "That's work." I mean, that's like really, really work, hard work, and stuff you got to pay attention to, because if you do something wrong, there's consequences. So even like on a day where I would, say fake air quotes, a bad day, I always remember those guys. Like, you know what? Nothing bad happened. Nothing, it's whatever. I had to do more commercials than I thought I was going to have to do. But a lot of it for me is just the stepping away. And in fact, this year I've taken more like long weekends than I normally would do. Instead of taking like week vacations, we'll still do that in the summer, go for a week. Took a couple long weekends in February, long weekend in March, just to have a couple of days of not, disconnecting from like everything. And that helps a lot, because it accumulates. You start, and how your brain works. It just multiplies geometrically whatever it is you're thinking about. Yeah. So for me, that's an important part of it. It's just, every now and then, just stepping away. Okay, it's not that bad. Nothing bad is happening here. It's just I'm just tired. That's it.
Yeah.
But it's an important. I know May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and over the years, I'm glad that is able to be discussed more openly than when I started 43 years ago. And it's really maybe been only in the past 10 years or so that it's spoken on the same level as physical health. For if I walk outside here when we're done and I break my leg, then I go to the doctor. I got to go to the emergency room. And the fact that you can now talk openly about to going to see a therapist or whatever it is that you need to do for your mental health. I'm glad that we're at that place where that's kind of on almost like an even keel with every other part of health.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it's so important to disconnect and just like, right. And we were talking earlier about do not disturb and how important that feature is on your iPhone.
Oh yeah. When I go to bed, I just plug my phone in, but it's in my office. I know a lot of people use their phone for the alarm clock. Yeah. Or whatever. But I think it'd be too tempting to like because people text, because I go to bed pretty early, and sometimes people I'm trying to get a hold of are on the West Coast or in a different time zone, so they'll get back to me, and I'll hear my phone at like 10:30, So if I had it next to me and using it as an alarm clock, I'd be too tempted to like respond or get it. And so, oh, who was that? So I don't even keep it in the same room. So usually every night, right around this time, is I just start to power everything down. No more email, no more whatever. Because otherwise, I think you're not really totally resting.
Yeah, they'd say not to look at your phone like an hour before you go to bed, just because of the light from it, and that will disrupt your sleep.
Yeah, I totally agree with it. Again, kind of going back to the universe and the leaving signs. The older I get, the more I follow, or I'm open to a lot of those things that when I was younger, it's like, that's a bunch of bunk. But now there is something to all that. Just getting a good healthy night's sleep and unplugging for however long you need to unplug to kind of re-energize and come back strong. Otherwise, sometimes you feel like you're on a treadmill. It's just like another day. Here's another day. Here's another day. And so there's some weeks where we have a lot going on, and then just like at home too. Just maybe there's weddings on the weekend. Yeah. There's work stuff during the week, and I go back to that calendar next to my phone, and it's like some months, like every day, there's like
something.
There's something, and those are the times when I look at it where that would kind of get to me, like, oh. Well, I guess, no is a good word, by the way. Don't be afraid once in a while to say no, like.
Yes, no is a very important word.
No.
And guess what? When someone says something, the sentence is no.
Yeah.
Like you don't say no because it's just no.
No. I think Jerry Seinfeld joked about that, about turning 60. He said that's the best thing about being in your 60s is you can say no with no explanation. Say, nope.
Boundaries are important.
Yeah.
They're for you, they're for no one else. It's for your mental sanity. Just like when you put your phone in the other room, like that's for you, that's for no one else.
That's it. That's now my time. There's work time and home time, and that's my time, and it's important to have my time, whatever that happens to be. And I remember driving to Boston once to visit a friend, and it's from here about a 5-hour drive, 5.5 hours, whatever it is. And I don't listen to, when I'm on a trip like that, I don't listen to the radio. I like the silence. Nope. I want to look out the window. I might have a CD, if anything, if I want to listen to music. But as far as like, actually listening to the radio for a trip like that, that's like my time. I love driving. To me, that's my place. Mm-hmm. I can relax, and it's not work related. And it's, probably like if I worked at a McDonald's, the last thing I want to do is go to McDonald's. So when I'm on a long trip and, I got a weekend, I don't have to be anywhere, and I'm just going for goofing around or meeting some friends or whatever, I don't even listen to the radio.
Because you're around it all the time anyway.
Yep. I'm around it all the time, and I pay a lot of attention to it in town. I go into work, I'll listen to news, updates. If there's something going on in another station, I'll flip around, or, sometimes I just have friends that work at different stations just to kind of whatever. But when I'm just getting away from it, I just power it down, and that's it. That's my time.
Silence is golden.
Yes.
And I know you like to be outside a lot. You like to go for walks, you bike ride. Like, I feel like you're very active in the outdoor sense.
Yeah, I do like that. And I've always gone camping. I go with some friends up to the Adirondacks. I've been doing that for years. I was born up in Saranac Lake. I have a lot of relatives. I had a lot of relatives up there, a couple still. I don't get up there as often anymore, but I do go up to Old Forge, Inlet, Racket Lake, Blue Mountain Lake, that area. And I love that. And one of the places that I've gone for years is Big Island, which is out in the middle of Racket Lake. Mm-hmm. And one of the cool things out there is cell phones don't work. So
amazing.
When you go out there, it's like whether you want to or not, you're unplugging, and it's an amazing feeling, and it's, I mean, if there's an emergency, people know where I am, like, or how to get a hold of me, because I know some friends around the lake there. But as far as like just like unplugging to the point where it's like, doesn't even work anyway. So why bother even bringing it?
That's great.
It is great. And then while I'm there, we'll canoe, hike. I love the mountains. I'm doing more biking. I'm kind of working through a bum runner's knee, just for lack of whatever. It's nothing torn or broken or anything like that, but it's just like a tendonitis that's just nagging. So I'm
Oh,
it's early this year, but I've been doing more biking
Yeah.
and walking. I haven't run. The last run I did a Thanksgiving Day 5K turkey trot in Baldwinsville. And I ran it fine, but like an hour later I was like hobbling up and like I thought I did something like horrible to it, but it's just getting old.
Yeah.
Just getting old. But yes, I do like to get out and get some fresh air, and I think that's important too. A little sunshine on your face.
Yeah, and of course when the weather's nice during
Yes.
Syracuse, spring, summer, and we're gonna have some beautiful weather for the summer.
Yes, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yay. Well, Gomez, that's all the time that we have for this evening. I just want to say thank you so much for coming on my show. As I said to you earlier, this has been a long time in the making, and this was so much fun. I feel like we could have gone for another 3 or 4 hours, but I'm not going to do that to you. I know you need to get up, but I know you're going to come back, and we're going to talk about so many.
I will come back again. I promise.
Awesome. Well, guys, if you don't already, please make sure to follow Gomez. You can hear him every morning on TK99. Where else can they find you, Gomez?
On Twitch, you can go to, if you want to watch, it's the Twitch platform, but it's qsportstalk.com is the name of the site. But if you type that in, it takes you to the Twitch channel. That's on live from 6 to 10 in the morning. And then Instagram, like the station has, TK Classic Rock is what the page is on Facebook and Instagram. Mine is just Gomez Adams on Facebook, like right there on the screen, or Insta Gomez Graham on Instagram. And then that's enough.
Yeah. And
That's
if
enough.
you're doing some comedy, come and support Gomez.
Yes. It's a fun night out, and I try to get that word out. And sometimes some of the shows I do, I don't find out until like a day or two before. I'll get a call like, hey, can you do? So sometimes I don't get a lot of time to promote, but the ones I do, I try to get out there. So if you happen to see it out there somewhere at the Funny Bone or whatever, come on out and say hi and have some fun.
Yes, guys, go say hi to Gomez. And thank you once again for coming on my show. So very grateful for your time. And guys, if you're new here, I'm Ashley Live. This is Vibin with Ashley Live. Hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you next time, guys. Thank you so much, Gomez.
Bye-bye, Ashley. Thanks.